Hi everyone and welcome to another painting guide. Just like in some of my other videos, this will be a 2-level painting guide where I paint all 14 of the Traitor Guardsmen. I'm going to start off by attaching all the minis to bottle caps with poster putty for priming and handling. Next I'm covering the gaps with Astro Granite texture paint, and then I'm going to add a few rocks with super glue. Now there are 2 copies of each of 7 different units, so I'm going to paint these guys like 2 different squads. The first 7 will be primed with Mechanicus Standard Grey from Games Workshop, and the second with Skeleton Bone from Army Painter. The reason I chose these colors is partly because I own these 2 colors as pots of paint as well, and that's going to make touch-ups a lot easier. The first color I'm putting on is Plate Mail Metal from Army Painter, and I'm painting all the chainmail armor with this, though for this part any silver metallic will do. I'm using this same color to paint the blade of the shovels on the flamethrower units. Next I'm painting the skin, and I'm going to randomly paint 7 guardsmen with a darker skin tone and 7 with a pale skin tone. There's not much skin exposed on these guys, so there's not a lot to do on this step. Now I'm going to do the cloaks in Khorne Red. I'm also going to use this color to paint the wrappings on the wrist, on some of the legs, and around the necks of the guardsmen. I'm just going to leave the bandanas on the faces of the guardsmen, but those could definitely be painted red as well. Next I'm moving on to the armor plates. I used 3 different colors on the armor: gunmetal, German grey, and heavy grey. This first color is Army Painter's gunmetal, and I'm going to use it to paint any piece of armor that has a blade or a spike attached to it. After that I'll use it to paint a few other random bits of armor just to give a bit of variety to each miniature. I'm also using the gunmetal coincidentally on all the metal parts of the guns, and also the pipe bombs and a few random grenades. And since I'm going nuts with the gunmetal, I'm going to paint the body of the chainsword, the metal spikes and chains attached to the 2 sergeants, as well as their masks. So that's the first 3 colors on, and next I'm doing the second armor color, this time German Grey from Vallejo. If you don't have this color, it's basically half and half Mechanicus Standard Grey and Abaddon Black. I'm first using this on the boots of every soldier. Standard issue boots for everyone. Now for the 7 soldiers that were primed in bone, they will be getting German grey helmets, and I'm also painting the gloves on 4 of the soldiers. The flame units don't look like they have gloves on, but I'm going to paint their hands to look that way anyhow. Why? Because no one should use a flamethrower barehanded. Safety first. You can also use this paint to cover some of the armor plating if you wish. I covered 1 or 2 pieces here and there. For all the remaining armor plates, helmets, and for the rest of the grenades, I'm using heavy grey from Vallejo. If you don't have this color, the closest match I've seen is Deathworld Forest. 4 of the guardsmen are wearing fur cloaks. I'm using 3 colors to paint these, the first being Skavenblight Dinge. All of the cloaks are getting a base coat with this color. Next I'm using a leather color for the underside of the cloaks. This one is Beast Hide from P3. Finally, I'm using Celestra Grey and dry brushing all of the fur on the cloak. Next, I'm going to paint all the stocks of the guns and the clubs with Mournfang brown. I'm also using the Mournfang on the handles of the shovels carried by the flame units. I'm switching to Steel Legion Drab, and I'm using this on all the belts and belt pouches. I'm also using it on the necklaces that some of the guardsmen are wearing. Basically, anything that's still unpainted that looks like it's made of leather is getting painted with this color. So now there's almost nothing left to paint on these guys, as I plan to leave their jackets, pants, and bandanas the same color as the primer. For all the details that are left, I'll be using either plate mail metal or bright bronze. So first I'm painting all of their insignias with bronze, and all their buckles and buttons with plate mail metal. Some of the other details are things like the spikes on the clubs and the canteen looking things hanging from some of their belts. I'm also going to use the bronze and plate mail metal to finish off the chainswords. The trim and the motor are getting painted with the bronze, and all the teeth are getting painted with the silver color. I'm also going back and getting all the bombs and grenades that I totally missed with the gunmetal. I plan to do some heat staining on the end of the flamethrower, so I'm painting this with the plate mail metal since I want a nice bright starting color for that. And last of all, I'm painting the fuel canisters with the bronze, and then I thought, why not make that skull pop a bit and paint that with the silver. The final small detail is the 4 skulls on the Sergeant models. I'm base coating all these with Celestra Grey, and then I'm going to come back with a layer of Ulthuan Grey on top of that. That's all the base colors completed. Next I'm going to apply some washes, and you don't have to have all of these colors. You can definitely get away with just a brown and a black. If you only have a brown and a black, just put black on everything metal and brown on everything else. I'm starting off with Nuln Oil Gloss, and this is going on everything that was painted with the German Grey, as well as everything that was painted with a metallic color. I'm also covering the skulls with this color. The advantage of the gloss over the regular Nuln oil is that it pools more heavily, creating darker shadows. This is great for metals since it leaves the upper surfaces very shiny and the recesses very dark. The one exception I'm making with this wash is the ends of the barrels on the flame units. I want to do something special with those, but if you don't care about that, then just put the wash over this too. Next I'm switching to regular Nuln oil. This is going to be used on all the grey uniforms and also the fur cloaks that some of these guys are wearing. Now I'm switching to Agrax Earthshade. This is being used on all the bone-colored uniforms, as well as anything painted with a dark green paint, like the armor plates and the grenades. I'm also using this on the stocks of all the weapons. For the hands and faces, I'm using Reikland Fleshshade. And last of all, I'm using Carroburg Crimson on all the red fabric. These guys are looking tabletop ready now, I'd say, so I'm painting the bases black, and I'm going to call that the end of the level 1 paint job. Next I'll be adding a few extra details and highlights, but nothing too crazy since there are 14 of these guys. So here's what the Traitor Guardsmen look like with just their base coats of paint on and some washes, and they'll look even better after a coat of matte varnish. For level 2, I'm going to start off with a simple dry brush highlight of all the armor and boots. All of the dark grey helmets and boots are getting a dry brush of Mechanicus Standard Grey. When you're doing this, try to keep your brush strokes perpendicular to the angle of the surface that you're painting to maximize the effect of the highlight. Here I'm trying to pick out all the folds and the treads in the boots, as well as the rim all around the helmet, and any battle damage that I see. After that, I'm going to do the exact same thing with the Nurgling Green to all the green helmets and grenades. I found that the armor plates were too hard to get to with this color, so I switched to a small brush and I did a simple edge highlight on those instead. For the cloaks, I'm just reapplying the Khorne red, but avoiding all the deep recesses. After that's on, I'm going to switch to Wazdaka Red and apply this to the most raised parts of the cloak and a small amount around the upturned edges of the cloak as well. I'm not doing anything fancy with the wraps on the wrists and legs, just a simple dry brush with Wazdaka Red. 6 of the 14 guardsmen are wearing goggles, and I do want to do something special with these. I'm going to do a very simple lens reflection, and as you can see, it's very hard to tell what's going on inside this lens. So instead, I'll show you what I'm doing to each lens on my thumbnail. I'm starting off by painting the entire inside of the lens with black. Next I'm using Mephiston Red, and I'm painting a large crescent moon shape that takes up most of the black but leaves a dark spot in the top left corner. After that, I'll do a smaller crescent in the bottom right corner with Wild Rider Red. And finally, I'll use a pure white and put a small dot in the top right corner. Now for the flame units. I'm going to add a simple heat stain on the ends of the flamers. I'm starting off with Sepia ink and covering the entire end of the barrel. Once that is completely dry, I'm going to add a layer of Druchii violet to the last half of the barrel. You can then add black to the very tip if you want to create a look of carbon buildup. And finally, the skulls are getting a simple dry brush of Ulthuan grey. The base is going to be done very simply. I'm first dry brushing with Incubi darkness, and then I'm going to follow that up with a lighter dry brush of Sotek green. And there you have it, the Traitor Guardsmen from Blackstone Fortress. This was definitely not a speed paint, but there were a lot of shortcuts taken to hasten the process. Thank you very much to all my patrons for supporting these videos, and a special thanks to Brian Jones for sponsoring the channel. There's a lot more coming from Blackstone Fortress, as well as Massive Darkness, Kingdom Death, Nemesis, and a ton of new Kickstarters that are on the way. I hope you found this video useful, and thank you for watching.